G'day everyone. What we're going to work through today is how to set up Apigee X on the Google Cloud Platform. So Apigee have been around since 2010 with their original Apigee OPDK product, and just recently they have launched Apigee X in February of 2021, and this is after being acquired by Google in 2016. So this demonstration, we're going to go through setting up Apigee X, which is the first time the Apigee product has been natively integrated as a selectable option in the Google Cloud Platform. But before we get started, there are a few prerequisites that we need to cover in order to make sure you can set up Apigee X too. First one is have a GCP account on project, have an SSL certificate, and optionally, you can have an Apigee paid account. In this case, we're using the free evaluation trial. So once you've set up your Apigee X project, just a project in the Google Cloud Platform, in this case, we've got Apigee X-Sonray. What we're going to do after we've got that project set up is get the console up and running. And from the console, we just want to make sure that we have initialized into the project successfully, because we'll end up using the console, but mostly the user interface through a wizard to be able to set things up. So we'll do a gcloud config list first, just to make sure we're in the right project and we're logged in with the right username. We'll just authorize that. Of course, if you aren't, you can just do a gcloud init to initialize your environment settings. Now we're going to head over to the VPC Networks tab that we just opened up earlier. And we can see there we've got the default network set up. But what we want to do is create a new VPC and a couple of subnets to be used by Apigee X. Of course, you can do this by going to the Create VPC Network button in the UI, but what we're going to do is use the CLI instead. And here we're going to create an Apigee X-network. And we'll create a couple of subnets in here. So the first one we'll call Apigee X-net-SID. in the Sydney Southeast 1 region, and we're just using one of the SID ranges. And we'll create another one in Melbourne, again using a different private IP range, and we'll do a refresh, and we can see both the networks up and running there. And we'll use those networks to set up Apigee X. And so now we're going to go to the Apigee X setup page, or the setup wizard, and we'll go to apigee.google.com/setup for that. And we'll open that up in a new tab for you. Okay. I've got that. And this is the first step in setting up Apigee X under your project. You can see there the first field to fill out is the project ID, and we'll just fill in Apigee X-Sonray. It's an Apigee X evaluation. Hit continue. This will give us a few options now. The first one is making sure we've got the APIs enabled. So there's 3 APIs there. The Apigee API, Compute Engine, and Service Networking API, making sure they're enabled. And now we'll set up the network. We'll choose that network that we created earlier, Apigee X-network. And there's a couple of options you can choose from here, either allocate the IPs automatically or select and create a new IP range manually. But we're just going to go with the automatic option here today, and we'll allocate and connect. That takes a couple of minutes, but we'll fast forward through that one. make sure we can speed this video up. So it's creating that Apigee network. It's creating that. So what it's doing here is it's establishing the private connection to the Google services using that VPC network we set up before, that ApigeeX network. And this will take a couple of minutes to set up generally. But once that is set up, I will then go on to setting up the Apigee evaluation organization. And so we'll click on edit there to edit the details. And this is where you can select the different regions. So for the analytics region, we'll end up selecting the Southeast one, the Sydney region. Analytics isn't available in Melbourne yet. And for the runtime though, since Melbourne is the new region, we'll look at selecting Melbourne. So let's have a look at the analytics region. There we go, Southeast 1. We'll select that one for our analytics region. And for our runtime location, we'll go with Melbourne, Southeast 2, which is the newest region that's Google just launched in July. We'll provision that. Now this step generally takes anywhere between 15 to 30 minutes to set that up. So effectively this is building your ApigeeX instance in your VPC. So go and grab a coffee. Now we'll set up the routing, so how it's going to be routed to. So this is pretty cool because you can set up ApigeeX as a private gateway with no internet access, or you can set it up with internet access to allow people outside to be able to interact with your APIs, whether they're partners or the public. In this case though, we're going to enable internet access so we can allow outside users to be able to interact with our APIs, which is probably the most common format. We can see there Google gives us a bit of a rundown of how much it's going to cost to run the Google Cloud load balancer that it will set up for us, and the VMs that are associated with that. In this instance, I've pre-configured this from a previous demonstration, so it's automatically picking up the load balancer, the URL for the load balancer, ApigeeX.sonrayconsulting.io. But you can also be presented on this screen to load your certificates for the first time, but it's already picking up what I'd previously loaded in there before. And of course it has a compute engine associated with the runtime and the runtime environment itself. And here's where we can select that network that we set up earlier, that subnet, the Melbourne network, which is where we're going to run the runtime. So I'll set that access up to allow public traffic through. And again, this can take a couple of minutes as it runs through setting up that public access. Okay, that's really it. So let's continue. And your API gateway is very simply built. At the moment, we can see the front end IP address there. And we've got that front end IP address already tied back to an A record. You can see there it's ApigeeX.sonrayconsulting.io, and it's telling you to create an API record. So simply go into your hosting provider and create an A record for ApigeeX pointing to that IP address. What we're going to do also is open the Apigee console and have a look at that. And we can see there ApigeeX.sonray eval, and we see the console looks very familiar if you've seen Apigee SaaS before or OPDK. And we've even got an API there, a Hello World API that they've launched for you to be able to use for some pretty simple testing, which is under /Hello World. Let's launch that from here. We can see what it comes up with. Okay, we've got hello guest coming back, so that's working. Although we've got not secure, the certificate. Okay, so it's giving us the old certificates. This is from a previous deployment. So let's have a look at an additional step here and see how we go about either adding or replacing a certificate. So we'll go to Network Access and Load Balancer, and we'll go to the load balancer that was set up for Apigee X. We can see there the certificate there, Apigee SSL Cert, and we can see that's the old certificate that was showing before. So we'll click on Edit on that load balancer and go to the front end configuration, and we'll go into the certificate section and create a new certificate. So we've got one already created for this, for the ApigeeX .sunrayconsulting.io. So we'll load that in. Has to be a PEM file, and it should use RSA 256 encryption on the key. So let's upload the key, and we'll give it a name as well. Let's call it ApigeeX SSL Cert. We'll create that. And we'll deselect the old certificate and click OK. And done. And update. So this will go ahead now and update the load balancer with that new certificate. And what we'll do is we'll look to use Postman to make an API call through to that API that's on our new ApigeeX platform. And we'll go to Hello World through Postman, and we'll see what it brings back. So the API is still up and running. Let's have a look at the certificate. Yep, and there we go. Yeah, ApigeeX.sunrayconsulting.io. Perfect. And yeah, you can see the remote address there, the IP address for that. So it's picking up the new certificate. That's pointed to the right IP address. So there you have it, ApigeeX on the Google Compute platform. And that was set up pretty easily in about an hour. Might take you maybe 2 to 3 hours to set up the first time, but as you can see, it's a very simple and easy exercise to set up probably the world-class API gateway. So thanks all, and enjoy the rest of your day.